sometimes the harsh advice is to lift you up. And you have to know the difference between somebody like who's just trying to hate on you and be like, oh, you shouldn't do that because they will feel inadequate if you do it, or if they're telling you you shouldn't do that because you really shouldn't do that and they have your best intentions at heart.
Welcome to Radically Loved Radio. I am your host, Rosie Acosta, yoga teacher and teacher trainer, mindfulness coach, speaker, and creative writer. I am also the founder of radicallylove.com, a website where you can go for more information about yoga, mindfulness, meditation, and lifestyle advice. On this podcast, we talk to people within our health and wellness community that are creating content through the ritualistic practice of yoga, meditation, or overall mindful living. We hope to create value in your life so that you can achieve your highest potential and live a radically loved life. To stay in touch with us, just follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Rosie Acosta and on Facebook at Radically Loved Rosie. You can sign up for our newsletter on radicallylove.com to stay up to date on future workshops, retreats, and latest podcasts. Earl Watson is an American professional basketball coach and former player in the NBA. He played college basketball for the UCLA Bruins. I first met Earl when he was coaching the Phoenix Suns, and we quickly hit it off. We talked all things yoga, and from that moment, I knew that Earl was special and that he was a serious yoga practitioner. His gorgeous fiancée, Joy Taylor, is an American radio personality and television host. Joy is also an avid yogi and is also serious about her practice. I was really excited to chat with both of them together in my living room, so you'll have to excuse the sound as my microphone was really low. And so we just did the best with what we had. It was really great to have a conversation with both of them. We talked about their upbringing and their connection to yoga as a spiritual practice. And they also shared the different hurdles that they've overcome getting to understand each other more and having a practice that is all about inner reflection and being open and aware. I'm so excited to share this beautiful conversation with all of you. Here is Earl Watson and Joy Taylor. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Radically Loved Radio. And we're in my living room. And I know that you guys can always tell when I'm recording in my living room. So I'm already just giving that disclaimer. I'm being joined by 2 + 1 entourage individuals. We've got Earl Watson and Joy Taylor in the house, and I'm so honored and excited to have them here and to talk about all things yoga and life and just cultivating your highest potential and just whatever we decide to have a conversation about as we have tea. Welcome.
Perfect.
I don't want to mess up your intro.
No, that's fine. So I'm excited to have you guys, and you guys obviously now know a little bit of background of me and who I am and what I do. And so I think the first question, and I like to ask this to the people that are on it, and I'd like you both to answer individually, is how do you feel the most free?
How do I feel the most free? I think I feel the most free when I'm having a laugh with someone that I love or care about. I think life is really hard in general, and there's a lot of pressures and stresses, and we live in Los Angeles, so there's traffic, and then there's just all this stuff going on. And I think when guards are down and you're just enjoying the presence or the communication with someone that you care about, and you're able to get on the same page in the same wavelength with laughter, to me is when I feel all guards are down, all anxieties are lifted for whatever that moment is. That to me is that's what pops in my mind right now anyway.
I think for me, it's harmonious vibes. It's when you can create in an environment that's full of synergy and harmony, and there's endless enlightenment and flow of conversation, communication, or just kind of literal gifts that you can give to each other that take you to visual levels. Like you can talk about something and vibe so high that you almost feel like you're there, but you're just in the living room, in the front room. And that's when I feel the most free, when creativity is at its highest frequency.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Those are really great answers. I always love when people have these in-depth answers like you guys had, and I rarely hear, well, when everything is going right in my life, or when I get the yes answer, or, things that I think we think of on a daily basis that, oh, this is what's going to help us feel free, like having financial security. All those things, like, of course, make us feel free. But at the end of the day, I think it's so much bigger than that. So I'd like to hear from you guys, especially because I know that you both have had, different journeys in getting to where you are. But I'm curious as to if there's been a ritual in your life, be it yoga or meditation, that has really helped serve as a stronghold for your life, like a solid foundation.
I think probably prayer, because I come from a very religious household growing up. I went to church like 5 days a week. It was just Baptist, so heavy church stuff. And I kind of transitioned away from going to church when my parents divorced. And, as anything, like you go through a journey of what your own, I guess, religious truth is or spirituality is. And I've kind of come full circle now, I guess, at this point in my life, back to Christianity. But, you always have questions about, especially organized religions, about what their standards are for what's acceptable. And I don't buy into those so much as I do like the core beliefs. But praying was always something that I felt was like not something that had to be formal, and not always something that has to be shared. Like it's kind of nice. Like we went to church on Sunday and it's nice to pray like as a community, but unless there's like a really powerful energy in the room, I've always felt like the most grounding thing for me is just like anywhere I am, I can pray. Like if I'm in a crisis situation or if I'm driving or in the shower or just, like I don't think that you need to set up a whole thing just to have that moment. And so to me, like that's something that's always carried me like throughout my life. And I find at certain points in my life where I felt like the darkest or the most empty is when I kind of either ignored that or felt a disconnect to that type of spirituality or was kind of denying that part of my life. So to me, that's a thread of connection for me.
For me, I've come along this journey to where I think when we're young, we're put into religion. And as we grow older, we have questions or different ideas, and then we become spiritual. So I'm more spiritual than I am religious. I'm not religious at all. I'm spiritual. And what's been great for me in my life has always been union. So my union has always been basketball, being a part of a team, being a part of a union. And as you grow older, it becomes such a great reward that you want it more than just in sports. And that led me to yoga. And that yoga is union. And so that yoga and union for me now is yoga. So we actually go to yoga together. And we met in a really dark place, Joy and I. I had just been fired from the Phoenix Suns. And she was coming out of a relationship where she was single. Like most people, when you meet, you're single if you're single. And you come out of some relationship that was challenging or not. And it wasn't until probably the second or third week we were dating where we established going to yoga into our ritual for dating. So we started going twice a week, and it became 3 times a week, and now we go 5 times a week. It's such a big part of who we are that I don't think you can even talk. We're like hip hop yogis, right? So as you see me now, I have my hat on backwards. I have on my Jordans, right? But then I go to the yoga studio like this, and it could be with like a Nike or a Jordan Jump hoodie, and I have my yoga shorts, and like it's such a mixed breed of like culture, but that's who we are. We're hip hop yogis, and it just is what it is.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I want to talk to you guys more about that because I think it's so important to speak to the fact that, to me, miracles happen when you're in a dark place and you're open to the belief, right? You have to have that openness that something or something will shift that darkness. And I feel like a lot of the time, especially in the day and age that we are now, where, societally we're in hate-mongering culture, that doesn't make it easy for somebody that's going through something dark to come out of it, right? So I'm curious as to what, for you guys individually, what it was, how easy it was for you to identify that you were in the place that you were in, and what was it that came in where you said, okay, it's time to shift it, and what did that look like? So a lot of times people listen to this podcast and they might be looking for some inspiration, or maybe they're going through something. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to sound probably a little sappy, but it was Earl. Like, I always joke with him, like, I remember the moment that, like, I was like, oh, I love him. And then, and it was in the same place. Like, I remember that moment. And then, like, before that, just like, it's like a movie, like there's certain memories you have in your life where you can just see them so vividly. And, I mean, if it's a younger person, well, I guess you still have rewind. You can buffer backwards on YouTube. But, like, when you would rewind a tape, like, if you rewind it too much, you wear it out, But he invited me out, and I met him at this club in LA. And obviously, we had talked before, and I had seen him before. But every time I saw him, he was in a suit, which I love, who doesn't love, a good-looking man in a suit. But, like, this is the first time I'm seeing him, like, as he normally is. And I just remember seeing him, and it was like, clubs are dark, and there's all kinds of stuff going on. There's people, and there's noise. And I remember seeing him, and there was just, like, this light over top of him. Like, it's just I know
like
it's
a metaphorical light, or
no. Like, I could see the light, but there wasn't literally a light. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's like that. Like, that's like in the movie where it's like there's a crazy scene, but they want you to focus on this one person, so they do the light on them, or it's just, that's really how it is. Like, it's like the poem, like, if a sea of people, I would always see you. And so it was just like literally this light on top of him. And then that night, just when we were talking, and he said something crazy to me, which, like, is a crazy thing to say.
What did I say? What did I say? Everyone wants to know.
We were, like, having a conversation about getting to know each other. And I'm a lunatic, but I'm very accepting of how crazy I am, which I think is the first step, right? Although I don't plan on curing myself of it. I acknowledge that I am. And we're talking, and we're, like, getting to know each other, and I'm in full defense mode because I am in this, dark space. And, but, like, in a dark space doesn't mean that you don't want to come out of it, and that's why I say it's Earl, because, I was out of my spiritual alignment, and had a lot of, like, negativity around me and a lot of negative people around me, and I was also healing from a lot of things, but I think you can still grow and you can still find redemption while you're healing, because I think we're all still healing. Like, I don't think there's ever a point where anyone is just completely whole. You can be in a good space, but you have to always be evolving. So anyway, I was in this space, and it was hard for me to see, but I was, like, praying for, relief, like praying for
what did I say?
I'm leading up to it. So I'm explaining why I was so resistant to it, because I'm in this mode where I'm like, no, like, everything you're saying is no. I don't want, like, can I curse?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Like love is bullshit, and like, fuck love and relationships and whatever. And, like, the whole time I'm like, I hope he says something that kind of flips back. Like, I'm just going to keep throwing this out there. And if he's like, yeah, me too. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, he's not serious about anything, and I know who he is. But he didn't. He was like, I do want love, and I do want a relationship, and, all these things. And, he kind of asked me, like, are you with anyone? And I was like, no. And he was like, well, it really doesn't matter, because I don't have time to be respectful. which is obviously not an appropriate or normal thing to say. Which would be, all right. So like most people would be like, okay, your reaction. And I'm like, oh, I kind of like that, which shows what's wrong with me, I guess. But anyway, that's kind of, that was it for me. Like that was a huge shift for me in my life, and I just kind of opened up to all things.
So it took you out of the severity of where you were at.
Right.
It took you from that place of like you were like committed to just being like, fuck this isn't gonna work. I'm like,
right. Well, when you're in a dark space,
sense.
you become cynical, but you just, it's kind of it's a snowball effect, right?
Right.
But like nothing rolls downhill forever.
Right.
So it's almost like when you crash, that's the best time to rebuild.
Yeah. Oh, I
So.
love what you said. That's, as Oprah would say, a tweetable moment. Nothing rolls downhill. That's true forever, right? So what was it for you, Earl?
Let me touch on this first. Right? this night, like just, I was in a very creative space because everything was possible, and it was the first time I've ever been fired in my life. And at that time, I was 37 years old, and not only did I get fired, I got fired in front of the world. So that was like really tough for me to embrace. And the reason why I got fired wasn't a legitimate reason. But I think in life you have integrity, you have character, and you have the person that you look at every morning in the mirror. And that person you look at every morning in the mirror, you got to love that person enough to say, I respect you and I trust you. And that person mattered to me. So we both met in a dark space. I was actually standing under a light because I knew it would look like I was lit up angelically.
Yeah.
You know, it was strategically planned, wink, wink. But I really didn't care in that moment. And we talk about, how can you be aware of where you are in a dark space? I think that goes back for us, and for me personally, that's where yoga becomes yoga. It teaches us mindfulness. And mindfulness isn't about awareness of yourself. You're not mindful until you're aware of strangers and their likes and discomforts and what can make their day better. So when I met Joy, it was no doubt in my mind that she was the person for me for the rest of my life. Her reaction to me became this beautiful masterpiece of imperfection, because all masterpieces are imperfect. And I felt her words were so completely opposite of her soul. And this was a moment for me to say, hey, let's journey together. My favorite book is The Alchemist, right? And so many omens are going to come into your life. And I just knew the omen for me during this trial and tribulation of being fired and recreating who I am in my career was the person I was going to be with for the rest of my life. If I don't get fired, I don't meet her. I didn't know her before then. I met her on her show to discuss why I got fired. And that's how we met, right? It's supposed to be. So anyone who's listening and anyone who's in a dark place, or this is a saying I love, I can't tell you everything I don't know. It's impossible. But The Alchemist is a book that changed my entire mental programming, that tells me that I am always going to look and be aware and be mindful of an omen that can lead me to positivity. Yeah. You can pass by 1,000 flowers a day on your way to work. Plenty of roses, tulips, whatever you have and where you're from. If you're not mindful of finding them, you'll never see them. So you have to be mindful. So for me, and I'm mindful, there's no exact strategy to being mindful. You just got to be open to positivity, open to love, open to growth, and open to revelation of yourself and who you really are.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so great. I can totally relate to that. And I think that just to bring it back into the yoga of it all, right? Like the practice of it all is so, it's such an important thing to integrate, because I think so many of us are living day to day from a mindless state, right? We're on like the autopilot system where we're just not paying attention, not paying attention, not paying attention. And then only when we're faced with a challenge, then it's like we don't value our health until we're sick.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, I'm sick. Oh, what is it like? I think about canker sores often because there's, those little things that just really bother you, right? Like they happen and you're just like, ugh. And you don't ever notice it until you have something that's gnawing at you.
Right.
One of the things that I'm curious to ask you guys about, I relate yoga so much to relationships, right? Or being in a relationship, not just romantic relationship, but also the relationships that we have with the people around us. And I feel like being in relationship is a spiritual practice, right? Because we have to be present, we have to be selfless, we have to be aware, we have to take action, we have to nurture a relationship, or else it dies. It's like a plant, right? So I'm curious of a couple of things in your guys' perspective, especially now in the world that we're in with dating, right? Like apps and doing all these random people are like into like open relationships and all these things, right? I've been in a long-term relationship for 16 years, so I know what it takes to be in a relationship and how much work it is, right? But I think that right now, and I think we're all around the same age, and it's different for the younger generation and the challenges that they're facing with cultivating a deep sense of connection. I love the fact that you guys met in person, that you guys met in the flesh,
Yeah.
right? So what's your guys' take on modern relationships and how people are connecting now? Is it something that's working? Is it not? Like what do you guys see happening, and how can we bring yoga into relationships? That's a good question.
I think like anything, everything's temporary, right? So people that get really into trends often get just as bored with them as quickly as they got into them. So, like, what are the trends right now? To meet online. I don't think that is a bad thing. I mean, it seems kind of foreign to us because, even though I'm sure we've all met people online, it's not, you then eventually have to do the face-to-face communication. And communication, I think, in general is just shifted because you have to read into tones and text messages, and that gets messed up, and you have to throw this emoji on here so you know that I'm really joking. And like there's, communication, I think, in general has just changed for sure. So, I mean, as far as I would relate it to yoga, like to me, yoga is a timeless practice, right? Like how long has it existed for? So in that same sense, communication is a timeless practice, and it's always changing, and you're always getting better at it. There's some poses I couldn't do in yoga that I can do, or even we always talk about it because like our hips, both of us have really tight hips, which is where you supposedly hold a lot of your trauma. And, you work on that, and we talk about communication all the time and love languages and how you communicate, and you have to get better at it. And some people are better at this kind of communication and that kind of communication. And some people like to communicate when they're in this state or that. I think it's just all connecting, like being in a flow, if you will, with that person. So I don't think that necessarily it's hard to connect with people just because you meet them online, or just because, Instagram, you can kind of create your own life, or I don't know anything about, Tinder or anything like that. But I think there's probably it's harder time finding, I don't even want to say that. Like I've always resisted to the idea, like I lived in Miami for a long time, which some people could say is a superficial city. Obviously, like Los Angeles is a superficial city from, the outside looking in, even though there's really a lot of like culture and normal people here, a lot more than that than in Hollywood. But I think because there's so much of that like fluff and just superficial stuff, it's kind of easier to find the realness because it's so obvious when you see it. So I don't think that it's bad what's happening. Like everything is going digital. You know what I mean? If you just all you have to do is pay attention to what kids are doing, like it's only going to continue. But it's just a matter of seeing what's real and separating it from the facade. And for me, that's all just about communication and connection. So as long as you're in tune with what you connect with, then it's just going to be as easy as it was when everybody had to go meet in person.
Yeah. Well, can I have a follow-up question to that? I think I agree with that, and I think it's really important. What I find kind of interesting with the younger generation, I say the younger generation, it's like we're all in the same, we all have the same device of communication, right? We have a phone, we text. But do you think that it's taking away from our ability to learn how to have a conversation in person?
I think it can. I mean, he kind of jokes with me all the time. Like I text him all day, and then when I get home, we're like, "What do we talk about now?" Because I know everything that he's done with his day. Whereas if like I couldn't talk to him all day, then when we'd see him at the end of the day, we'd have all this stuff to talk about. So I try to be more mindful of that, like those stuff that will happen in the moment that I'll like start texting him like, no, I'll just wait till later and tell him later. And I know he thinks I don't do that, but I really do that because I know Drake makes him crazy. But yeah, I mean, there is something to that for sure. I think being, face-to-face conversation and, eye contact and feeling like being able to feel the sense of the room and stuff, that can kind of get lost. But then it's just a matter of being conscious of it. You know what I mean? Like some people don't care. Some people just want to text back and forth all day long. And, some can go 8 hours and it not bother them. No, I'm not that person. But, it's all about balance.
Yeah, okay. Earl, what's your take? You're going to have to remember the first question.
Yeah, I have it all.
Okay.
I think 3 things. When we are apart, it's text, it's phone call, and then it's FaceTime. That is Joy's order if I do not answer the phone. She will text me first, she will call me, and then FaceTime me, and I better pick up. Because if I don't, it's over. I don't want to be the older, person in the room that say, we used to. And I'm a big Earl Nightingale fan. And he talks about to lead the future, you have to lead from, the younger generation. If you lead from your generation, you're leading the dead, right? Because our wave has happened. We talk about texting. There was a time when we could only write and we would send off a message. So I think there's beauty in the texting. I think it's a chance it's recreating the pen to the pad, but you're sending it through technology quicker. So if you wanted to write a beautiful note, instead of writing it on paper and mailing it, I can just send it. And there's beauty, so be creative with it. And then we talk about the person that just texts back and forth all the time. And that's why yoga is so important, because it teaches you to breathe. And that person is never taking an inhale, exhale. They're like you said, they're like just mimicking yesterday. And then mimicking tomorrow is going to be the same as today. And then we have the ability to connect around the world through social media, which we've never had before. So I think all of that is beautiful. But it also comes a time when you have to prioritize who gets your energy. So I'm sorry, like if you're not my priority, you're not going to get the in-person phone call or you might just get a text. I'm going to keep you a certain distance because I have solidified who gets my energy every day. We only have 100% energy every day we wake up. Where are you putting your energy? Who are you investing your energy into, and is it paying you dividends or are you just wasting it? So for us, a lot of our interaction was in person because we're in the same city. Now, when I continue and go back to coaching, we're going to be apart. So we have to be creative to keep the same synergy, but just change the way we communicate. And hopefully every once in a while or a lot of times, we can still get that connectivity in person, because there's nothing like the power of a touch, the power of a hug, the power of just the presence of souls and energies all in one room. That's, to me, is most powerful.
Yeah, I like that. I totally agree. I want to go back to something that you said about the time, and I love Earl Nightingale. I love those lessons and reading and hearing them, and they're incredible. So, you said something so poignant, and I want to be able to talk about it and hear your guys' thoughts on this idea of time, because we are in a world of instant gratification. We send a text, we want a response, like we look on our browser, we want it to pop up fast. It's like we can't even wait anymore. Now it's like, why is this taking so long to load? What is the... And, you know, not to go back in my day, but, you know, dial up, like we had to wait, right? Right. We had to wait for it to like come up. So one of the things that we practice in yoga is this idea of sankalpa, of setting an intention, right? Sankalpa, you go to a class and the teacher might say, set your intention or set your sankalpa for your practice. And it's an intention. It's actually more intense of a resolution. So san means the highest, right? So of the highest. And kalpa means a vow. So essentially it's asking for you to set a vow. And kalpa is also related to kala, which is time. So it's a vow of the highest that's going to go over the course of time, right? So this idea of having to wait or cultivating something over a long period of time, I feel like is also something that we, in our modern day society, we tend to forget that things take time. It's like getting to know somebody takes time, you know, doing these practices, getting better at yoga, learning a different pose takes time. And you know, especially as a coach, it's like somebody doesn't get good overnight. What happens? They do it over a long period of time. And so I'm curious as to how, if you have a sankalpa that you're working with now, if you have something that you're working on now, or have something that you've been working on for a long time, what it is, and or if there's something that you've set into motion in as of late that you'd like to see come to fruition, something that's going to be worth waiting for.
I mean, I think for me, like the biggest thing with yoga, especially, like it's funny that you said the intention thing, because it's hard to separate, right? Like if you do, like, say, an hour-long class, you know, like you have this crazy day and you try and like calm down and get centered and focused to do this class, and like in your mind are all these things, and you know, I have to take care of this and I have to take care of that, and you don't bring your phone in the studio, and it's like this whole disconnection, right, from the outside world, which you don't really get in, you know, some other, I guess, workouts or things that you do, you know, like if you're in the gym, you can still be on your phone and whatever. So for me, I have a really bad anxiety, which I've struggled with for a long time. And it, you know, it varies. Anyone who has anxiety knows what I'm talking about. Like it can be anything from like, shit, did I leave the flat iron on? Like the house is probably burning down, or like I burned a hole in the counter, or like, you know, the stove might still be on from 2 days ago, or like, what if I didn't lock the car? Like you just your mind just starts going, and it's like this horrible feeling. You can't even describe it. Like it's in the center of everything that you do and you are. And it can be something so small to something huge, you know, like, do I, you know, have cancer, or, you know what I mean? Like there's a whole spectrum of it. And for me, yoga's really helped me with that a lot. Yoga and just really like what I've been working on, at least for the past year, and I'm just starting to feel like I'm getting results, is to just, you can't block anxiety out like that. If it was that easy, then just no one would have anxiety about anything, because it's just as irrational as it is to think I left the flat iron on when I know I unplugged the flat iron. It's like your mind doesn't work that way. And it's anxiety is so much a part of like your emotion as it is your mind, that it's like it's constant clash, and whatever's strongest that day will win. So some days you'll beat it and some days you won't. And for me, yoga has been like crucial when I get in the room and I'm laying there and all these things start popping up, for me to just like breathe through it and just know, like, at the end of the day, like, I see that everything is temporary, but like you can't fix it. Like I'm not leaving this room no matter what. So whatever it is that's happening is just going to happen, and I'm going to deal with it afterwards. So for whatever this 60 minutes or 90 minutes or 30 minutes is, like, this is just a time where I'm just going to focus on what's happening in this room. And if you carry that out into your life, if you have anxiety, that's like a practice that you can apply when you start worrying and you start overthinking, and your mind, you start like having, like, you feel like you're about to have a panic attack or an emotional breakdown. Just remember, like, nothing is ever as bad as you think it is. And because if it was, then, you know, you would just plan for it. And everything is temporary. So this feeling that you're having of negativity is temporary. The feeling that you're having of positivity is temporary, because everything is a constant moving wave affecting everything else in the entire universe, as like macro as that is. So for me, that's kind of an intention that I've been working on, because trauma can a lot of times manifest in anxiety. And, some people need medication or whatever, but to me, I think centering yourself and just that's worked for me anyway. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Earl?
For me, it's always the same. And I said this before. Yoga to me first started out to benefit my career as an NBA player. I played 13 years. And it was physical. And then the more I saw the physical results, the more I went. And then it became mental. Like, oh, mental toughness is putting me in positions I'm uncomfortable. I'm learning how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And now I'm at a point where I've been going consistent, because routine is the key to anything successful. Now I've been going so long routinely that it's spiritual. And it's evolved to that. Everything evolves. So for the longest time, it's been freedom. Because I'm so highly competitive, I become attached to expectations. And one of my favorite books is Be Here Now by Ram Dass. And he talks about how you need to be unattached. You can't have a subject-object relationship. You need to just journey. You need to feel. You need to just be. Like, be here now. That's all that matters. So yoga, when we practice, we go into the yoga studio together. We have, the key fobs where you check in and they're on my keys. So if I ever go without her, the first thing they say is, "Where's Joy?" "Oh, she's at work." It just, we so used to going together, but we don't practice next to each other, because we need to give each other enough space to say, "I love you. You can go over here." She has her space. Her space is, mid left. I kind of go mid right, closest to the door, to get fresh air when it's too hot, because we do hot yoga. And that's just how we practice. But we always, sometimes we always find each other in the mirror, and we're like, catch eye contact and smile, just to let each other know, like, we're here. So we have this beautiful harmony. It's imperfect. We can't tell anyone how to have a 16-year relationship, because I think we've only been 16 months. So we're in the beginning wave of it, but we're journeying together.
Same difference. I want to actually speak to that, but continue.
So it's like we're journeying together, and kind of like our journey together is just beginning. So we are still vibrating to create a frequency to where we become more mindful of each other, more mindful of, what builds each other up, because it's different. What builds me is not going to build her. And we have to learn each other and not expect the same result that we want for ourselves. And then stay unattached, because this is beautiful. I forgot to tell you this. So Coach Wooden, who is legendary UCLA basketball coach, 10 straight national championships. I was talking to my friend who used to spend a lot of time with Coach Wooden. I spent a lot of time with Coach Wooden. And he always talked about his wife. His wife at that time was deceased. I was at UCLA from 97 to 2001. And I would go visit him on the weekends. And every Sunday he would write his wife a love letter who was deceased. He would fold it up, put it in an envelope, and put it in a box underneath his bed. So my friend was telling me how he was over there before. And he asked him, "Why are you not married yet?" And he said, "Coach, for some reason, women of today, we have people of today. Women of today, they just want this and they need that, and it's too much." He goes, "No." He's like, and he put out a card. His wife and him should write each other cards, right? He put out the card, and the card said, "This is so powerful. It's going to help us, trust me. I know you're waiting to see what it's going to say." And the card says, "Don't try to understand me. Just love me." Don't me right now.
That was joy.
And he's telling me this story, and I know that's an omen for me. That's my omen, because I've been successful at understanding everything, right? But I can't worry about understanding the partner that I want to spend the rest of my life with. I just have to love her. And maybe it's not just her. Maybe it's also our lives. Maybe we can't and we don't need to try to figure out our life. We just need to love that we have a life. Love that we have a moment. Love that we have the opportunity and become unattached from the results. If that makes sense.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Don't hold this against me. Now don't be like bring this home like Coach Wooden said.
No, it's in there.
She put it
Women
in.
have filing cabinets of
Yep.
stuff. That's
True.
That's in file 1.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's beautiful. I mean, that, to me, just going back to what you said, like, what I've learned after being in a relationship for this long and being young when we started dating, I mean, I would say it's probably my first and only real relationship that I've ever had, has been to just keep the newness never goes away. Like that feeling, that excitement, that love, that doesn't go away. Sometimes you forget it when people act a certain way. But it's always there. And I think that's the beauty of a lasting relationship, is keeping that. And I think that you said something so key about not trying to figure it all out. I think that's where we get fucked up, right? Because we want to figure out everything. We forget. It's like, no, you don't have to figure anything out. This person came into your life. This is your beloved. They are the love of your life now. And you have to just treat them as such and give them the space to have their own experience. And your job is to love them 100% no matter what. That's your only job. And if you think about it in those terms, it releases. The problem is we get into attachment, right? With like, this is how I want you to make me happy, right? This is how I want you to create this for me. And anytime I've ever experienced that, it never works. Because it's like you can't, you're externalizing your happiness. And your happiness has to come from within, right? It comes from you, from your connection to God or source or whatever higher power of your understanding. So when you're connected to that, that's why I think being in a relationship is the most spiritual thing that we could do. Because it really teaches us that bond and that surrender and that faith to be like, wow, this person is my twin flame. They're my heart, my breath, my everything. And to honor that person just like that is you honoring the divine within yourself, right?
Yeah. There's a book he actually had that I read. It's like I have it in my backpack right now. It's called The Way to Love. And that's all it talks about, is just not being attached to something, which is very difficult, especially, we're talking about like how things are today. Everything is like, this is mine and this is mine and this belongs to me. And it's like, you can't, like the trees don't ask for anything in return when they give us shade, right? Like they just are. Like a flower just is, it doesn't ask for anything in return. And being giving, I think, is the biggest part of a successful relationship. Any relationship is understanding the person and understanding like everything changes. Like you change, why wouldn't your partner change, or why wouldn't your friend change, or your mother change, or to me, like relationships are, people always look at romantic relationships as they should be something separate from any other kind of relationship that you have in your life, like your relationship with your best friend. It's a powerful relationship, but that relationship isn't the same as it was, your childhood best friend who you are now, because you guys aren't kids anymore. Right. And those are the relationships that kind of grow apart, like the person that you both change and you have nothing in common anymore. You have to accept the change just as in yourself as you do with someone else. So that, to me, like that's what attachment is. Like, don't assume that person needs to be what you've created them in your mind to be.
Well, and it's conditional love. It's not unconditional love.
Right.
Right. It's conditional in the sense of you do this, or I'm not going to love you. Right. Well, and it also ties into the expectation of it all. And like, I love, my teacher always says, expectation is just premeditated resentment.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Because it's like, I'm premeditated because I'm going to resent you because you're not
doing what I expect you to do.
Yeah. And even if they do, there's always going to be that. It's like never going to be enough, right? It's never going to be enough until you feel you're enough, right? Man, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you guys one more question with regard to just this idea of relationships and how to be responsible for the energy that you're bringing into the world. And both of you have had very successful careers in your own right, and you've done the work to get to where you are to this date. So my question is with regard to, and Joy, you kind of brought this up a little bit with regard to the people around you. I grew up around a loving environment, but not necessarily always supportive, right? It was like it's like poppy syndrome, right? Tall poppy syndrome is so when poppies grow, they grow all at the same height. If one starts to grow a little bit above the others, the root system of the others will come down and pull it down so that it's all the same. So I kind of grew up in an environment like that where it's like, we want you to be successful, but just not too much, because then that means that I have to show up in some way, right? So have either of you guys had that experience, and or if you've had it, how have you been able to cultivate friends or people in your life? Because Joy, you mentioned earlier that when you were in that dark place, you were maybe not around the best people, or it was just kind of one of those things. So I'm curious as to how you came out of that, or what you did or didn't do, how you were able to identify that, and maybe any advice you could give the people that are listening that are maybe in that same spot.
I think the best way to see what people are around you for is when you do come out of that space. It's like the idea of boundaries, right? So when you are no longer doing what you were doing before, are they angry at you for that? Because then you know that whatever you were doing before when it wasn't serving you was serving them. So to me, that's the easiest way, because you're going to have people around you and you're not going to be able to see their intentions all the time. It can be anyone. It can be your family. It can be your best friends. It can be your coworkers or your partners. It can be your actual partner. And everyone goes through ups and downs in life, right? Like you see the best and the worst of people in the worst times, right? So when you transition out of whatever it is that you're struggling with, when you start saying, well, I don't do that anymore, or, I'm not going there anymore, or I don't, talk to this person anymore, whatever, and they become angry with you or they're disappointed in you, then you know that person either didn't have your best intention in mind or they're still in that space. So you have to set a boundary with that person. It's just boundaries to me. Like if people are not okay with you setting up boundaries, then they're a positive influence around you. So it's not about always people like trying to hold you down. Like sometimes the harsh advice is to lift you up. And you have to know the difference between somebody like who's just trying to hate on you and be like, oh, you shouldn't do that because they will feel inadequate if you do it. Or if they're telling you you shouldn't do that because you really shouldn't do that. And they have your best intentions at heart. And that's hard to navigate because, I think I'm a trusting person. I always try to see the light in people first, which is probably not the best way to be, but it's just kind of how I'm wired. And that is, to me, the best way to see it. So sometimes you don't see it right away, but when you do see it, it'll be very clear because you're in a good space and you're happy and you're thriving, and someone will try to put you back in that space. And when you say no, their answer should be, oh, great, whatever makes you happy. But if the answer is not that, you have your answer.
I think for me, I've been very blessed to have the opportunities in life, whether it was negativity that molded me to think a certain way or positive environments, and it's been 50-50. I didn't grow up with a lot. I'm Afro-Latino. My dad is obviously African-American. My mom is first generation Mexican-American. High school suspended 13 times, expelled once, and still I ended up at UCLA for an opportunity to attend a prestigious university and play basketball. I was their at-risk student that they took a chance on. And it wasn't until I changed my environment that I began to value who I was more. And the change of environment led me to believe I was capable of something more. It became this chance for me to fall in love with the person in the mirror that I see every morning versus being so afraid of who that person in the mirror was becoming in negative environments. Now, I had a supportive family, I had supportive relatives, and my entire community wasn't bad. But the things that were bad in my community was so extreme, it impacted me psychologically. So here I am now. I feel like I'm still on my journey. I'm not yet defined. And when you talk about, other people and, people that bring you down or people that lift you up, I think no matter who you go around, whether you're successful, beyond successful, or on your way, or trying to become and figure out, you have to remember that we're all fighting inner battles that we don't talk about. We all have dark secrets that really internally it bothers us. So how can we influence everyone's life that we come across in a positive way where when you walk away, they feel like they're better than before you approach them? And then when you walk away, they look and say, oh, that's him or that's her? Wow. And it's not just the people who are important. It's the people who, I used to clean buildings with my mom. I used to clean commercial buildings on the weekends, every Friday night, just so I could have money to travel and play AAU basketball in the summer. And we would vacuum these buildings and we would, pick up the trash, change the trash cans. And I remember how people treated us. They treated us like we were third-class citizens. And I remember and it was something in me that was like, one day I'm gonna come back and buy this building and I'm gonna cancel all your fucking contracts. That's just how I felt. And it moved me, but I never forgot that. So here I am now in life where I'm financially fine, but I never forget where I came from. I never forget, you never know who's going to become who in life. And you don't treat them right because they might become someone. You treat them right because we are spirits having a human experience. It's never the other way around. And once you realize that whatever happens in this life has to be with positive light, because you can't take it with you anyway. So what are we really attached to? Can't be attached to the human side of life. We have to be focused and have a perspective on spirituality and how we all, beyond race, color, gender, religion, we all are a spirit that is going to unify somewhere else later. So I think perspective is everything. And I think giving, loving, and serving are three things that has kept me grounded when everything seemed chaotic.
So great. I can talk. This is like going to church. We could sit here and talk forever. Oh, that's so good. I have two final questions for you guys. And I'm so happy that we're having this conversation because now I'm just thinking you guys need to come back and we need to talk about this topic, this topic. So I'd like you both to answer this question individually. What has been your consistent mantra, if you've had one your entire life, or maybe it's something that you've believed from a young age that still stands true to this day, that has been a self-affirmation that you've had?
I came from a very abusive childhood with a lot of chaos and just negativity and kind of just survival on many levels, but just the base level is just emotional, constant fear. So with that comes a sense of inadequacy And I think for me, like one thing I've attached to, I was like suicidal around 12. And I remember having this moment where, like normally, a little kid will be afraid to like go out in the dark, and I had to take the garbage out once. And, I didn't grow up in a horrible neighborhood, but it wasn't the best neighborhood. And I'm by myself, I'm taking the garbage out, it's super dark out, and I just had no fear of anything happening to me. Like I didn't care. I was like, there's this random person walking down the street that could grab me. Like I didn't care what happened, because it's just like nothing could be as bad as what is inside the house. So I think in that moment, I was like, no matter what, no one's ever going to be able to just defeat me. Like I know that I'm capable and I'm different, and I have something and no one else has. And I think it was just like that click of just having no more fear of anything, which was a negative thing. I just transitioned to like, no matter what happens, I'm going to succeed. Like in whatever it is that I want to do, I'm going to succeed. And I've just kind of always attached to that, because I think it's like you just mentioned, like people trying to bring you down and things like that. Everyone deals with that. Everyone in the whole world has people around them who've told them they're not good enough, or, tried to literally do things to keep them from reaching their potential. And I think it's like you said, you have to make yourself happy. Like you have to believe in yourself. Like I always tell people when I give them like career advice or anything else, is like, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else is going to believe in yourself. People can feel confidence. And even if you literally can't, I mean, you see stories all the time of these incredible feats by people that otherwise would never be able to do that. People have been told they're never going to walk again and then go and play sports at a high level. Like you see all kinds of things like that. And it's just the power of the mind. You have to convince yourself every day of whatever it is that you want to accomplish. And I think for me, that was like a turning moment where I was like, okay, nothing can stop me. Which is, I don't know if it makes sense, but.
No, it totally makes sense. That made me emotional. That like, that really got me, because I think that to me, that's what your soul comes into this world to do. Like that's your soul speaking. That level of not even just tenacity, but just like resolve. That just knowingness. It's like that warrior spirit, right? That's just like, this is me. This is what I'm here to do.
Right.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
For me, I've always had this fight. Growing up biracial, I was raised in a house in a culture which was Mexican American, but outside my house was predominantly African American. So inside my house, we had Latino way of growing up, Latino food, chorizo in the morning. My mom would send me to the bus stop with burritos, chorizo, potatoes,
Of course.
and beans. And here I am with in the foil,
Yep.
wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am with all my African American friends asking me what the hell is that. So, I'm breaking them off pieces of the burrito, and they love it so much I'm coming back with 4 burritos the next day to the bus stop, right? I'm like, I'll let you have one of these if you let me, borrow like your He-Man. And they're like, cool, you can take my He-Man and my WWF, man doll, and you can have, I'm like, cool, I'm like, leveraging burritos, but I've never fit into a community. When I would go visit my grandmother, who was an undocumented citizen, it was in a predominantly Mexican American neighborhood. They saw me as black. And then when I go outside, they saw me as Mexican. So I never fit. And then I play a predominantly black sport, which is basketball. And every basketball at a high level is going to run through the hood, the inner city. I really didn't fit. I'm in the game, drilling down a court as a 3rd grader. I hear parents yelling, pick them up, play defense. And I hear my mom yelling in Spanish, like, mío, tírale, tírale. So like, I've never fit. And then that led to me getting in trouble in school, because I was having problems at predominantly African American schools. And that's why we'll always get in trouble and get suspended at a fight. So that part of me became the renegade part. And then as I got to school at UCLA and I started to evolve in my education, had success in the MBA, and started creating real estate and started creating platforms for Latinos, giving back to a preschool that was named after me in the neighborhood I grew up, and all these travel teams and programs for the community that became legit. And we just recently started a hip hop yogi line called Renegade Legit, because this is who we've been our whole lives. We've been renegades where we've been imperfect and edgy and felt like we didn't belong. And then we also been legit to where we came in and we did things that were successful, and we're on these platforms and people celebrated our merit. If only you knew the fabric behind all of that and the DNA. It's the most imperfect thing in the world. We just were resilient enough to be put into a corner and realized all we need was a little bit of light. We don't need all the light. We just need a little bit of light. You give us a little bit of light, and we will create a platform where you have to acknowledge us. The minute you focus on the darkness, your vision is blinded. It's over. It's dead. Focus on that little bit of light, and we all have it. And we love the environment you provided for us. This has been great. Even for our relationship, it's been great. You have no idea. And it's so good. Our +1 entourage, it was so the soothing that he just took a nap and woke up with his hand up like he's in church. And we're going to make him pay offering a little bit just for sitting here. But we appreciate you. We love it. Everything you're doing is all light and energy, and it's a blessing to be here.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. I didn't expect that at the end. No, that was so great. And as I said, I mean, I can sit here and talk to you guys for the whole afternoon. I want to ask you guys the final question, and I ask this to all my guests. It's been so inspiring. I always love interviewing people in person because it just creates a certain level of intimacy and connection, and to me, these conversations give me life, and so that's why I started the podcast. Stop it, Chewy. That's why I started the podcast, was because I wanted to be able to share these conversations with people because they're so inspiring and impactful, and and I get to learn stuff. And initially, I'm like, I just want to have conversations with really great people, and I want to have the excuse that it's a podcast. I'm like, really, it was just like selfish. But now it's just turned into something so much more beautiful and vast, and I'm so grateful. So the final question it's with regard to the podcast. And so radically loved is this idea that we are radically loved by God or source or whatever higher power of your understanding is, that the universe works for us and not against us. And the idea is that we are radically loved. We are radically supported. And so the final question to you both is, how do you feel radically loved? You can answer individually.
I think it's just a kind of a part of who I am in general. Like it takes a lot to deal with me, let alone to love me, and. So I think I'm grateful for all of the love and support that I've received. It all feels special to me. I think I feel empathy for people who don't see the support and the gifts that they have around them. I think we all fall in that from time to time. We get selfish, or we get absorbed in the moment, and we don't appreciate, we don't have gratitude for the little things and just the conversations and moments and, experiences we have with people. But to me, I think everyone just has their own unique journey, So I've grown, growing up in a religious household, you have a certain sense of of higher power or whatever. And so you feel a love from that or from the universe in general, and kind of feel touched in your own way. I think it's important to recognize that, like, when you don't feel like you're loved, to tap into that most of all. So I just think I'm a unique person, and I'm difficult and very crazy. Um, so I get radical, I guess. So yeah, so I think any love that I receive is that to me.
I don't think you're difficult to love. I think you're easy to love and you're complex, which is the beauty in you, right? So for me though, I've been through a lot in life, and I've been very, very blessed to have certain people come into my life. And I believe that the universe is always for me. If I want something bad enough and I become attached to an idea, if it's not good, the universe will not manifest it. And I got to be open to accepting that. And then some way, it's always something better along the way. I just can't see it yet. And when you have that perception or you have that experience in life, and you have moments where you feel like it's the darkest days in your life and you lost those you love most, or things were stripped from you as a child, whether it's innocence or just abuse, and you still can love, that's when I think you are truly walking in your journey of enlightenment. And the great thing about these journeys is there's no such thing as a destination. There's no such thing as when you get your dream job, it's over. That journey continues. The same as love, the same as relationships, the same as success in business. You're a continuous evolvement of your own ideas and vivid imagination. So radically love to me is the ability to have imagination, the ability to give and accept love. And for me, I've been very blessed to have all of those wrapped into my entire experience of life thus far.
Thank you. You guys, thank you so much for coming to my house and for doing this and for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your hearts. I'm just, as I said, I'm so inspired and grateful to have this forum and to have people like you to be able to ask questions and share your knowledge with everybody. For the people that are listening to this podcast, where can they go to connect with you guys individually?
I have a podcast also. It's the Maybe I'm Crazy podcast. I mentioned that a few times today. Maybe I'm Crazy podcast, which you can watch on YouTube and all podcast forums. It's a mainly sports pop culture podcast, and I also do a daily show on FS1. I co-host with Colin Cowherd. It's called The Herd, and that's weekdays from 12 p.m. to 3 Eastern Time. So you can reach me there, or I'm on all social media platforms at Joy Taylor Talks.
I think for me, just social media. I don't do Twitter. I do it once every 6 months. Even though I got my most followers on Twitter, I don't know what they're waiting for. I'm not going to tweet. But Instagram, Earl J. Watson, and, somewhere in Joy's Instagram pictures, I will be tagged.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, all of those links, including Joy's shows, will be on the show notes of this particular podcast. So if you're listening to this, hit the info button and all of those links will be on there. Is there anything else you guys want to share? What's this Renegade? Tell me about that.
Renegade, legit. We fell in love with. We're in the process of putting together, designing the clothes, because we feel like, obviously being, Afro-Latino, I want to put our culture mixed to yoga clothes. And we really want to open up a studio. We want to open up a yoga studio, a place of community, not just a place of practice. And that's just our synergy. And I guess that's the beauty of yoga. It led us into being a part of the entire fabric and DNA of what it really does.
Yeah, and I think for on a cultural level, I'm biracial also, black and white. And I think yoga can sometimes feel like an elitist thing, you know, especially certain parts of the country. I'm from Pittsburgh. He's from Kansas City. You know, just now is yoga starting to become like a thing in Pittsburgh. I think a lot of people in my hometown would be like, oh, nobody does yoga. You know, you went to Cali and got Hollywood, even though that's not where I started doing yoga. But it's, you know, it's still kind of a niche thing to people. Like, you don't see the connection in it and benefits of it. And especially for like women of color. I mean, when I first started doing yoga, I had hair extensions in. So hot yoga is a once a week thing because I'm not trying to get my hair done every other day, and I can't be walking around with this sweaty head. So like there's a lot of disconnections, I think, like culturally, that, you know, I want to speak to and open up and, you know, make it available to everybody and make it, you know, more, not a mainstream thing, but something that people don't feel like they need to be the best at, or they need to know everything about, or they have to have it for a specific purpose, or it's like a religion or something. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just kind of break down those barriers so it can benefit more people.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you for sharing. I just wanted to drop that in there. You mentioned it and I was like, we need to touch on this. Okay. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for having us.
I appreciate you guys so much.
No, thanks for having us.
We do it again.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks to Chewy.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I am so excited to continue to do this. Please share this with your friends. Email us, message us on Instagram at Rosie Acosta or on Twitter at Rosie Acosta. Subscribe on iTunes, write a review. We love doing this, so please help us continue to keep this podcast going. Thanks for listening.